I sensed trouble the second my mother avoided my eyes. Not the harmless kind she used when pretending my food tasted great, but the stiff, frozen sort of silence someone carries when they're waiting for the consequences of a choice they already regret. The air around her felt sharp, metallic, like biting your tongue hard enough to taste blood. Outside the hotel window, Christmas lights smeared across the frosted glass, glowing in and out like distant alarms. At our table, my sister dragged her spoon in slow circles around her glass, like she was stirring guilt instead of water. Grant kept skimming the menu, even though the options barely covered 2 pages. And my father just watched me, calculating, preparing himself. I knew exactly what this dinner was really about, long before any of them opened their mouths. The waiter slipped the bill onto the table quietly, the leather folder sliding forward like a piece of evidence in a courtroom. No one touched it. Everyone just stared. Then, like bad actors in a cheap play, they started. My mother gasped softly. Grant patted his pockets like he expected something to magically appear. My sister squeaked, "Oh no, my purse is in the car." It was pathetic, almost comical, definitely predictable. This wasn't the betrayal that hurt me. That wound had already scarred over. This was just the final scene. I used to believe family grounded you, that they kept you steady. I held on to that idea long after I should have, especially after Aunt Na passed and left behind an inheritance none of us expected to be worth so much. Modest life, modest home, but the stocks? They were the real surprise. Everyone cried when they heard the amount. My sister looked like she was ready to faint, but it was me Aunt Na chose to handle everything. She told me once, "You're the only one who doesn't trade affection for money." At the time, I thought she meant that lovingly. Then strange things started happening. Letters gone missing. My signature appearing where I'd never signed. Constant family emergencies that were totally unrelated. Of course, they were sure I wouldn't question them. They counted on my trust, my softness, my loyalty. They assumed I wouldn't notice the gradual draining of my inheritance into places where my name didn't appear at all. Until one Tuesday afternoon, the truth landed in my hands. A transfer slip showing $84,600 moved into an account shared by my parents and sister. I wasn't listed anywhere. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply adjusted my understanding of who they were. And I prepared. I gathered screenshots, documents, statements, signatures. Enough proof to build a map of their greed. I spoke to lawyers, accountants, more lawyers. If they wanted to play with money behind my back, then I would play with structure, consequences, and law. Revenge wasn't my goal. Not then. It was clarity. Revenge grew later, when they invited me to this hotel under the excuse of a family Christmas dinner and said we should talk about the funds. Their true mistake wasn't stealing from me. It was believing I wouldn't change. When I arrived tonight, I already knew the script. They wanted me to sign over control of the inheritance, for the good of the family. What they didn't know was that I hadn't come alone. My lawyer sat at the bar, waiting for my signal. The bill still sat untouched. My father finally picked it up, exhaling dramatically. "Oh, wow. That's higher than we expected," he said, trying to sound surprised. My mother placed a hand on my arm. "Sweetheart, we're all a little short today. You'll cover it, right?" There it was. Sweet manipulation, wrapped like a gift. I reached into my coat. My sister straightened with anticipation, convinced she'd won. Instead, I placed a single penny on the table. They froze. "What is that?" my sister whispered. "My share," I said. "Since you've all grown used to taking what doesn't belong to you, I figured I'd offer you something you can't divide." My father's face tightened. "Stop being dramatic. Pay your part." I leaned back, calm. "I'm not paying for this meal," I replied. "But—" I raised my hand. "My lawyer is." He walked over, opened his briefcase, and set down a neat stack of documents in front of them. Lawsuits, criminal complaints, civil filings. All arranged neatly. All ready to go. "Merry Christmas," I murmured. "I thought you finally deserved something sincere." Their faces drained of color in perfect synchronization, a choreography of guilt and panic. They tried excuses. Pleading. Threats. None of it mattered. The paperwork spoke louder than any of them ever had. As I stood to leave, the lights flickered, catching the penny in a soft glow. The tiniest object on the table, yet somehow the most powerful. It bought me the last word. And their freedom? That would cost them far more than anything they had stolen.